All right, here's that moment of truth. See how we're doing here. There we go. There we go. All right, YouTube, we're here. What's up, everybody? Good to see everyone. And let's see here. Rockfin, are you awake? You are. How about that? You're awake. We're all awake. What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday. It's a Sunday. I hope you did your due diligence. Whatever that is on a Sunday. Maybe you went to church. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you harvest some crops on Sunday. That's I wish I farmed. You can tell I don't because I just described it that way. One time I asked a group of people in like a farming town if the farms were open. That was like how I phrased it. And they thought that was hilarious. I was on, it was a stand-up show many, many years ago. And I was just like, hey, so are the farms open? And they just laughed. And I was like, well, what do you call it? And they're like, Ron, it's called harvest season. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get. That's pretty goofy on my part. I wish I was that guy. I wish I could farm. So sorry we're a few minutes late, by the way. This is the patron stream and the Rockfin Premium stream where I respond directly to patrons and Rockfin Premium members. And the replay of this stream is only available on Patreon or Rockfin Premium. So go ahead and join over Rockfin Premium or join over Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Placone, because the replay of this stream is only available on Patreon or Rockfin Premium. That's how we roll here. But it goes out live to everyone. Everyone can watch it when it's live. Well, only on YouTube or Rockfin, but then the replay only available on Patreon, Rockfin Premium. And you can join my Patreon for a give what you can level. I do not have any tiers, TIER, on my Patreon. The only tiers I have are tears of joy. um so yeah, it's a give what you can level, and I'll make you a theme song. I know some of you are waiting on theme songs. They will be coming very shortly. The past few weekends, I had some other projects that I'm working on, some writing projects and so forth. But I will be pumping out some more theme songs. I know I still got a list of theme songs to get to. I will be getting to them. So if you're waiting on one, hang in there. No, they're coming. I pump them out as quick as I can. You know the drill. You know the drill. And for those of you who have already received yours, I hope you love them. And if you want one, patreon.com/Ron Placone. For a give what you can level, you get the replay of this stream and every patron stream. You get a patron Zoom show once a week. I do a Zoom show just for patrons and Rockfin Premium members. I tell jokes, sing a couple tunes. We chat it up. It's a blast. I freaking love those. I'm going to continue those after the pandemic. I know that after the pandemic, Zoom comedy is going to go away for the most part, and that's fine. It's nothing compared to the live thing. It's nowhere near as cool. But for something like a Patreon where people live all over the freaking place, it's cool that once a week we can gather and do something fun. So that's going to continue after the pandemic. Um, yeah, I decided that a while ago because I really liked it. And I'm like, I'll miss this after the pandemic's over. And then I thought, you know what? Screw it. We'll just keep doing it after. I might have to tweak the times a little bit because, I know some people like maybe they're working from home right now and then they won't be in the future. So anyway, but we'll cross that bridge when it comes. Anyway, so happy Sunday. I'm glad to see everybody. And I hope everyone is doing very well. I'm sorry I'm a little late. I started explaining that, and then I just got sidetracked, just kind of talking about the Patreon and the Rockfin Premium in general. But literally right before, right before I went to go live, my internet kicked out. Literally, it just kicked out. My internet just went bye. Right as soon as I was about to go live. I shit you not. It literally just was like, yeah, no. And right before I went live, my internet just went away. I was like, oh, that's great. That's beautiful. How convenient is that? Not convenient at all. It's been ever since they did that upgrade thing. I think I need to call on the internet infrastructure at my in my neighborhood, basically. And I was going to say at my apartment complex, but it was more than that. It was in my neighborhood, And why do they do that? They do that because they don't build decent enough infrastructure in the first place because they're profit-driven big cable enterprises who have an organized duopoly. That's why. So again, it's so funny how like I am like I talk about municipal broadband all the time, and I myself am a prime example for it. Like I'm living the life of why we need municipal broadband. Like the other week, they had a big cable outage in my neighborhood because they were doing upgrades on the cable. Why did they have to do that? Because they didn't build it good enough in the first place to save money. That's why. And we're still dealing with that. Literally right before I went to start the stream, my internet just kicked out. I was like, you've got to be shitting me. So then I had to reset the router, wait for it to come back. It wasn't a huge deal. We were about like 6 or 7 minutes late. I just want y'all to know it's not because I slept in. It's because freaking big cable. They're fucking with us. I did not. I have in the past. There have been times in the past where I've been a few minutes late to the Patreon stream. And it's like, yeah, I slept in. It's Sunday. What are you going to do? I like streaming on Sundays, though. Whenever we do the Patreon stream on a different day, I'm just off my game. And you guys have noticed that. We did a Patreon stream on Thursday, and I was just like, I feel like everything's wrong right now. I feel like we're not supposed to be here. I feel like what we're doing, we're committing. We're doing something wrong. Anyway. And some of you guys are saying, some of you who are also in other areas, you're saying that you're seeing some outages too in some Southern California. Nina, you bring up how Rogers sucks up in Canada. We're going to be talking about that soon. I saw the story that you shared. And someone's here from Napoli. Ciao, Carmen. Come stai oggi? Sta bene? Sono pratico italiano di più perché ho il Duolingo. How do you say apps in Italian? Like how do you say it's an app? I don't know how to say app in Italian. But yeah, I have been practicing more. Sometimes what I do is quando faccio la doccia parlo italiano di praticare. Sometimes in the shower, I'll just practice my Italian. Like I'll just say stuff in Italian. Sometimes I say stuff to my wife and then she'll be like, what did you say? And then I'll tell her. And usually I said something nice. I said something like, you're pretty, crap. I just went away from I just went out of the, whatchamacallit. That's annoying. I went out of the thing. There we go. I'm back. I got out of the board for a second. All right. Anyway, let me go to what y'all are saying. Let me get to the patrons here. And we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up as far as submissions go. So we're starting with Paziamores. What's up, Paziamores? I hope everything is wonderful in Michigan. What I'm trying to think like what month it is, right? Oh, it's springtime in Michigan. I bet it's really pretty out there. I miss seasons a little bit. Not enough that I would want to trade it in for Southern California. You know what I mean? I like the weather here very much. As much as I do occasionally miss fall. I don't miss it enough that I'd want to give up the weather in Southern California. I like the fact that I can go for a walk outside 12 months out of the year. I don't like the earthquakes and the fires, but but I do like the scenery and the sunshine. But anyway, I bet it's springtime in Michigan, and I guess maybe the cherries are blooming, which is not how it's harvest, right? I drink water out of a mason jar. I should know this. But I don't. All right. So anyway, here's what you share, Paziamores. Oh, you share the Joy Behar, Caitlyn Jenner thing, which I heard about that. I haven't really looked into it, but you say this is totally legit. If I don't get 40 weeks, then I find myself spewing random anti-Semitic, racist, or other rando hate speech. Doesn't that happen to everyone? You ask sarcastically. So let's see what happens because I haven't looked into it yet, but let's see. The View co-host Joy Behar found herself apologizing for misgendering Caitlyn Jenner multiple times during a Friday broadcast, claiming that she underslept. I didn't get enough sleep. The apology came out of a discussion between her. Okay, so she called Caitlyn Jenner he several times within the same breath. So here's the quote. Here's what she said, and she's referring to Caitlyn Jenner. He's got this guy, Brad Pascal, running his campaign. What do you think about that? I mean, that guy was accused of using campaign fund to enrich himself. The guy who is running his campaign, or her campaign rather, I think that she should. Okay, that's a bit. How many times you corrected yourself? You should have been over it by then, and you kept doing it. I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't get enough sleep. Come on. And again, I'm no fan of Caitlyn Jenner. I'm not a fan of her. I'm not a fan of her views. But criticize her on policy. And I'm not saying Joy Behar was. I mean, I have no idea if Joy Behar was doing it intentionally or not. I really don't know. But how many times do you need to do that? I mean, eventually, when you see it in print, and this wasn't in print, this was on microphone, which are two different things. When it's in print, somebody read it and reread it, and it went through an editing process. So whenever you see somebody misgendering Chelsea Manning, it's on purpose and it's cruel. It's meant to be hateful. It's not a mistake in that case, because this has been read and reread and it went through an editing process. So all you're trying to do is you're just trying to marginalize her. You're just trying to take a dig at her every way you can. So, there's a big difference between in print and when it's on microphone. But how many times? I mean, come on, Joy. How many frickin' times you corrected yourself and you did it again? Jeesh. It's and my I don't know, a transgendered friend of mine told me, look, when that happens and it's just a slip of the tongue and it's an honest mistake, say you're sorry, move on, and don't do it again. And that's, that's pretty much the gist of it. That's what I've been told. And by told, I mean, like, I've seen tweets from transgendered people that I know. Like, I've seen tweets from them where they say, look, if you misgender someone and it's just a slip of the tongue and it's an honest mistake, just say you're sorry and make a better effort. And that's the end of it. They've said, don't fall all over yourself going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I swear I'm not a terrible person. Like don't do that. Cause then it's like, you're just kind of going over the top and no, just, you made a mistake and you just try better next time. You don't make a mistake and then do the same thing again. And they'll be like, oh, I swear, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired. I can't possibly. I'm just so sleep. Well, here, let's read her. She apologizes. Here's her apology. So first of all, let me apologize for my pronoun mix-up. I think I just didn't get enough sleep last night. I had no intention of mixing them up, and I tried to correct it immediately, but whatever. It just came out. So I'm sorry if anybody was upset by that. What a shitty apology. You could have just corrected yourself and then not done it again. You could have just done that. You could have just corrected yourself, not done it again, so you correct yourself a second time. I mean, it's, pretty ridiculous. Pretty bad form there. You catch yourself the first time, you correct yourself, but then you do it a second time, you correct yourself again. And then you make this apology that's, oh, sorry if anyone was offended by that. Did anyone else say anything on The View? did anyone... I mean, I don't watch The View, and that's not going to change. But, I mean, I'm curious if anybody... did any of our co-hosts correct her? Did Meghan McCain jump in and be like, that's not right. That's not right. My father was a trailblazer for LGBTQ rights. My father would not approve of this. All right. Well, that happened over on The View, and she blamed it on lack of sleep. And I mean, isn't Joy Behar the only one who is every now and again somewhat reasonable on that show? I think she is. I think Joy Behar is the only one where occasionally you're like, well, that's not totally ridiculous what she just said compared to the other stuff. Um anyway, so because I think at one point she was saying that socialism works, right? Joy Behar did that at one point in time. She was saying like socialism is not a bad thing. Which that was like, whoa, on cable television in the United States. Or was the View technically cable? But you know what I mean. Like corporate television, whatever. I don't know if the View is on cable or not. I don't have cable. So I don't know what qualifies as cable. But anyway. So yeah, I think Joy Behar is the only one occasionally who's somewhat reasonable on that ridiculous show. I mean, Whoopi Goldberg has a lot of her takes were very much ivory tower, and Meghan McCain is Meghan McCain. Do I need to say anything else about that one? But what do they talk about now that they can't just hate on Bernie the entire time? Like I don't even know what they talk about. I guess they misgender Caitlyn Jenner a bunch of times in a row. I guess that's what they do now. Because wasn't the whole point of that show like just we hate Bernie and everything about him? We hate Bernie. We're gonna do everything we can to make sure Bernie is not the president. We're gonna do everything we can to make sure. Now that they don't have to worry about that, what do they talk about? Probably just how great Biden is. Probably like Biden is exceeding everyone's expectations. He is. Where I missed that memo. I missed that memo. He's not exceeding my expectations. Anyway, I have no idea. Maybe they don't. Maybe they talk about nothing. Maybe the show is completely different now. Like Ron, you missed it. They talk about water crisis and climate change all the time now. Really? I doubt it. But yeah, I don't watch that show. So anyway, that happened. Joy Behar. Joy Behar has got to get more sleep so she doesn't misgender Caitlyn Jenner a ridiculous amount of times. It's like, I mean, if she just would have done it once and corrected herself, I don't even think it would have made news because it's like, well, it probably would have. I mean, people would have tweeted but it's like, okay, you slip up once and you correct yourself and you apologize and it's over. You don't like slip up a bunch of times, correct yourself, slip up more, correct yourself again, and then make this big apology and then go, well, I'm sorry if anyone was bothered. And if you're not a fan of Caitlyn Jenner, well, join the club. I'm not either. But criticize her on policies. Criticize her on principles. So anyway, so yeah, thank you for sharing that, Patsy Morris. And again, I hope everything is awesome in Michigan, and I hope that the cherries are blooming. And man, I got to get some of those. Man, my wife freaking loves cherries. It's like her favorite. Well, it's not her favorite fruit, but it's up there for her. She digs them, and she's never had I don't think she's ever had Michigan cherries. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think she's ever done that. Um, so I got to get some for her. That's on my list of things to do now. Anyway, all right. So thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to Chris. What's up, Chris? Chris, you say, so this is how the USPS is staying alive, doing the dirty work of government crooks, you ask. So let's see what this is all about. But the short answer to your question, though, is the U.S. Postal Service is actually not in danger. The U.S. Postal Service is just fine. There's just a bunch of propaganda saying that it's not. The U.S. Postal Service, they're doing just fine. You know why? Because they're called the U.S. Postal Service, not the U.S. Postal Business. So as long as they're providing the service they're supposed to provide, and they employ Americans, which they do both of those things, the U.S. Postal Service is fine. But it's a right-wing trick to demonize the Postal Service to try to explain the other failings of the federal government. And it's a old scapegoating bullshit trick. They demonize the Postal Service. They demonize Social Security. There's nothing wrong with Social Security. There's nothing wrong with the Postal Service. Neither of them are in danger of going under. They're both just fine. You look at the actual numbers, it's a bunch of bullshit, it's a bunch of propaganda. Um, but but they try to convince you otherwise so you can just go against your own interests. Social Security is in the interest of the American people. A strong postal service that provides jobs is in the interest of the American people. But apparently, this is something else where they're doing something kind of not so great here at the behest of the American government, which of course that can happen. So here is something. The Postal Service is running a covert operations program that monitors American social media posts. Wonderful. The law enforcement arm of the U.S. Postal Service has been quietly running a program that tracks and collects Americans' social media posts, including those about planned protests, according to a document obtained by Yahoo News. The details of the surveillance effort, known as ICOP, I gotta love it. Gotta love it. It's called ICOP, which means Internet Covert Operations Programs, or Internet Cops, have not been previously made public. The work involves having analysts trawl through social media sites to look for what the document describes as inflammatory postings and then sharing that information across government agencies. Analysts with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, Internet Covert, God, ICOP. Oh, here you go. It's called USPIS. Don't you just love that? The United States Postal Inspection Service, or USPIS for short. Man, let's call an organization USPIS and ICOP. Who would find that appealing? Yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to go work for USPIS. And then if I get promoted, I might become an ICOP. I'm doing the Lord's work. Look at me. I'm a US pisser. And I'm an ICOP. What do? I troll the internet. I scroll through the internet to shit on people planning protests, to report them. Oh, and by the way, the intelligence agencies have always done this. Now they're just getting the Postal Service involved. A number of groups were expected to gather in cities around the globe as part of a world rally for freedom and democracy to protest. They're protesting 5G. They're protesting lockdown measures. Blah blah blah. And no intelligence is okay. So they reported these folks. The bulletin includes screenshots of posts from protests on Facebook, Parler, Telegram, and other social media sites. Is Parler still around? Individuals mentioned by name include one alleged Proud Boy and several others. Okay. ICOP analysis are currently monitoring these social media channels. Well, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And again, some of the protests and actions that are planned very well may be things that I strongly disagree with. You know, you're talking Proud Boys, stuff like that. I do not endorse any of that stuff at all. However, do I want some surveillance by these new ICOPs feeding the intelligence agencies? No, I don't want that. You know, the only time we should do anything about speech on the internet or anywhere else is when it violates you guessed it, free speech laws. We have free speech laws. We have them. If they are violated, then there are consequences. If they are not violated, there shouldn't be any consequences. If you don't like somebody's ideas, publish some better ones. You're not going to like everybody's ideas. There's going to be a lot of things that are absolutely despicable and repulsive. Call them despicable and repulsive. But don't want some Orwellian overreach on speech, because guess what? That's going to affect you too. Thank you for sharing this, Chris. And I get what you're saying of like, oh, is this what's keeping the Postal Service open? But just saying, and of course, this is something the Postal Service is doing that's not good. But the Postal Service as an industry is totally fine. It's just a bunch of propaganda, right-wing propaganda going, oh, no, the Postal Service is sucking all of these funds. Don't you dare look at what we're spending on war or anything like that. And please ignore the fact that we just create our currency anyway. The problem is the Postal Service. That's why you don't have nice things. The Postal Service, that's the problem. No, the Postal Service employs Americans, which is what it's supposed to do, and it's providing a service, which is what it's supposed to do. Now, apparently it's also doing some things it isn't supposed to do, like this ICOP bullshit. So there you go. ICOP and US piss. Look, the Postal Service should be a place to send postals, shipments, not to be US piss and ICOP. So there we go. All right. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. Moving on here. Edwin, you just share a link with no disclaimer. I like that. I like it both. I like when there's disclaimers and or like synopsis. That's the word I was looking for too. So not necessarily a disclaimer, but a synopsis. Chris had a little synopsis here. Pazzy Morris, they had a little synopsis too. Edwin, he just dropped a link. He's like, boom, the link will speak for itself. Let's see what the link says. Let's see. 164 members of Congress send a letter to the SBA urging launch of SFOG applications. So I know a little bit about. Okay, yeah, this is the extension of the Save Our Stages Act, which was signed into law. Now, the Save Our Stages Act, for those of you who may remember, we talked about that a lot on this show. That was a bill that specifically provided economic relief to live venues. Because, look, like we said on this show, live venues were the first to close when the pandemic happened. They will be the last to reopen. And we're seeing that. They're still not reopened for the most part. I mean, in certain parts of the country, they're operating at, various capacities. But for the most part, they're still not back. So here's the article itself. Even as a lucky few venues around the country have been allowed to reopen their doors, many have remained shuttered for going on 13 months. The small businesses owners in all 50 states were delivered promising news on December 27th as the Save Our Stages Act, now known as the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant, was signed into law. Fast forward 115 days, venue owners are still unable to access the $16 billion earmarked for their financial survival. Great. On Monday, a bipartisan group of 164 individuals of both houses of Congress sent a letter to the SBA head, Isabel Guzman, asking her to act with a sense of urgency in opening up applications for the desperately needed SFOG funds. An initial application for the grants went live on April 8th, but immediately crashed. Oh, don't you just love how we do things? We just say, here, we're just gonna, the government's just gonna give money to all these privately, to various privately run entities, banks or whatever else they're gonna give it to, and then they're just gonna count on the banks to distribute it right and do the right thing. That's what they did with the PPP loans. They just gave the money to the banks, and they were like, you'll give it to people who need it, right? And the banks were like, no, probably not. And our government was like, that's fine, whatever. We gave it to you. We're done here. And then what happened? Well, because there was a very, 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 very broad definition of what qualified as a, quote, small business, a bunch of, quote, small businesses like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse or Shake Shack got a bunch of money because they had a team of lawyers working on their application around the clock. Meanwhile, actual small businesses didn't get anything because it was first come, first serve. And so who's going to get there first? The big company that has teams of lawyers working on their application around the clock and is ready to hit send as soon as it goes live, or the actual small business owner who's worried about their family and their children who aren't able to go to school and have to learn on Zoom, and their other employees who are members of their community. Who's going to get there first? And this was all by design. And now they're screwing up the Save Our Stages Act, an act that, seeing that pass, was actually a little bit of good news. So on Monday, all right, so they're pleading with them to, on Friday, after a week of uproar from struggling entrepreneurs across the country, the SBA said that it hopes, not promises, the site will be live by the end of this week. Over the next few days, our tech team and vendors will remain focused on testing the SFOG application portal. We are aiming to reopen the portal by the end of this week. But who's going to hold them accountable? Who's going to hold them accountable if it's not? And the SBA in this case is at least a government agency. So at least it's not as bad as the PPP where they're just giving it to the banks. At least in this case, it's a government agency. But it's still like why wasn't there a more direct relief sent to these venues? And why didn't we do something like other countries did where they just basically froze everything? They just froze everything. We didn't do that. Instead, we told everyone like fend for yourselves. And we're going to try to make some relief available here and there, but you need to figure out exactly what relief you qualify for and then you need to try to get it and you might not be able to get it. We took this total dog eat dog approach. And it was absolutely fuck nuts. And by the way, it goes against everything a federal government is supposed to be for. Your federal government exists for a number of reasons. One of them is if there's ever a pandemic, you're taken care of. We get through it as a society. When there's a pandemic, which happens once every 100 years for the most part, hopefully that doesn't change. And yeah, that's the point of a federal government. When something like a pandemic happens, they have your back. So, I get so bothered when they describe it as relief for people or helping people. And I use that myself, right? Like I'll say like, "Oh, your government doesn't want to help you." I'll say stuff like that myself. It's hard not to because that's just the vernacular people use. But in reality, it's not help, it's not relief. It's them not holding up their end of an agreement. Your government is not, quote, helping you or handing you something. It's we pay taxes. We pay taxes. And we're told that one of the reasons we pay taxes is so that the federal government can behave like a federal government. That's what we're told. That's the agreement we go into. That's not the reality, and we all know this, but that's what we're told. So they're not upholding their end of the agreement. That's simply what they're doing. By not providing resources during a pandemic and not figuring out a way for society to stay afloat during a pandemic, which other countries did. All kinds of other countries, and none of them were absolutely perfect. It's a pandemic. We're in uncharted territory. I get that. But they all banded together and figured out this is how our country is going to keep afloat. So, yeah. So that's a shame that the SFOG or the Save Our Stages funds have not gone out yet. We've been pushing the Save Our Stages Act since it was first introduced last year. And now we're in the middle of 2021, just about. We're almost there. I mean, it's going to be May soon. So we're almost midway through 2021. And nothing's gone out the door. It's interesting. The government can work very fast when it comes to dropping bombs, when it comes to defense budgets, when it comes to handing more money to Wall Street. They can work really fast when that's the case. But when it comes to stuff that actually gives relief to small businesses, gives relief to the people, all of a sudden they're just so slow. And they just can't figure out that full $2,000. Isn't it interesting? It sure is something. Nina, thank you for sharing that, Edwin. Nina, we are on to you. You have a disclaimer here. In the more reasons for Ron to move to Canada departments, new Liberal budget creates a $15 minimum wage. It extends COVID relief payments by 3 months, adds another $1 billion to the Universal Broadband Fund. That's awesome. Creates national childcare program, etc. And then you say, come on, Ron, come up to Canada's socialist utopia. You know you want to. I'll get more to that specifically in a second, but first let's get to the article you shared initially. Federal Budget 2021 highlights from the Liberal plan tabled Monday. Ottawa highlights from so $30 billion over the next 5 years, $8.3 going to early child care and Indigenous early learning and child care. That's awesome. $3 billion to Health Canada to support provinces and territories in improving long-term care. $2.2 billion in biomanufacturing and life sciences. A federal minimum wage of $15 an hour, rising with inflation. That's awesome. With provisions to ensure that where provincial or territorial minimum wage is higher, that wage will prevail. So basically, if the cost of living is way higher, so the wage is higher, that will prevail. That's good. New recovery hiring program, 17.6 billion towards green recovery to create jobs. Another billion over 6 years to the Universal Broadband Fund. And again, your broadband bill in Canada, it's not perfect, but the fact, again, the problem with that broadband bill, it invites the big cable companies to the table. That's the problem. It still incorporates Rogers and the big cable companies you got going on up there, which I know that they're not great actors. I would say they're probably not as bad as like what we have here with Comcast and AT&T. I can't say that for sure. I'm just guessing. But yeah, they're not the greatest of actors. And inviting them to the table is not ideal. It'd be better if it was just the internet's a public utility. We're building our own infrastructure. But what that bill does have is it has a lot of requirements as far as pricing and what's permitted with pricing. It has requirements as far as a certain level of acceptable quality. So there are requirements of quality that a big cable company must uphold. There are requirements of that they have to build everywhere, and there are requirements as far as pricing goes. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing, and that goes a lot further in making the internet a utility. Because the biggest problem with these big cable companies isn't necessarily just the fact that they're big cable companies; it's how they behave. I mean, if they acted ethically, there wouldn't be an issue. They don't. They act in the name of profit above all else. So what does that mean? Well, that means that they don't build the best infrastructure they can because they want to just make as much money as possible. It means that in certain rural areas, if they feel like they can't make enough money, they just don't go there, and those people are screwed. And that's why we still have a digital divide. It means that they're going to price gouge you. So if you restrict their ability to do all those things, well, then it's going to be a lot better. It's still not ideal that they're invited to the table at all. It's still not ideal, but it's a lot better. So, and then, hopefully it'll eventually just become a total public utility because big cable will eventually just kind of walk away if they can't make the type of money they want to make. It's just how it goes. So anyway, but yeah, so that's awesome. You're putting more money into it, which by the way, if you're putting $1 billion more into it, now you've been putting more into broadband than the United States has. Because if you're because I believe they already had $1 billion plan. So if they're having another billion, well, that's $2 billion. We've only committed potentially, and again, these are just fact sheets right now. We've only committed to about $1 billion in municipal infrastructure. So there you go. Thank you for sharing that, Nina. And yeah, as far as me moving, I've talked about it before. I talked about it with Lauren Ashcraft on the show before in depthly. I think a lot of Americans are in the same place where a lot of us don't want to leave. I mean, I don't. Some do. I mean, I don't. I love my neighborhood. I don't want to leave. However, I'm also not naive to the reality that it could come down to that. And I'm also not, it's something that I think about and I try to plan for should it ever come down to that. And again, I hope it doesn't. I like where I live. I want to stay here and I want to do everything I can to bring about a better tomorrow. And I hope that better tomorrow happens. I hope this country takes a turn for the better. Will it? I don't know for sure. There's reasons to be optimistic that it will. There's also reasons to think it might not. But I can say on a personal level, and I'm not saying that I'm any better or worse than anyone else. On a personal level, I don't want to give up yet. And I hope it doesn't come down to that. I hope I can stay here. But if I can't, if it really comes down to we got to get out of this place, which it might, then I'm going to greet that next chapter with optimism and hope and try to see the opportunity in it. Like, yeah, I love living in California. I don't want to leave. But if it comes down to it, and it's hard to wrap one's head around. I mean, so many people in the United States, their ancestors, for the most part, a lot of people, their ancestors came from other places and they left where they were for better opportunities. And we could be part of the generation that's the opposite of that. We could be, instead of a mass entrance, we could be part of a mass exodus, leaving the United States because of what it's become. And, again, I hope it doesn't come down to that, but it might, and I've been looking into different things in case it does. Canada's on that list. Scotland's on my list. England's on my list. The EU in general is on my list, like maybe somewhere like Italy or Portugal. Um, and I'll say this, and again, when I say this, I'm not saying that I'm right or wrong or that I'm better or worse than anyone else. Um, Another factor for me on a personal level is the fact that, my wife and I are undecided on children. We're leaning towards likely no, but we might change our minds. And I will say this, if children were in the picture, like if right now I had children, I would actively be trying to leave the United States. And it actually hurts a little bit to say that. But that's the truth, if I'm being honest. I'm not saying, again, I have tons of friends and family members who are raising their kids here, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But for me on a personal level, if I ever decided to have children, um, from my perspective, I would want to make sure I was doing absolutely everything in my power, every single thing possible in my power to make sure they had it just as good, if not better than me. And I don't think that's a possibility in the United States the way it is right now. So I would leave. And I don't know where I'd go exactly. Again, I mean, I just gave you the list of the places I'm considering most, but I would feel pressure to leave the United States to make sure that they had a better life. Um, so yeah, if I had kids, I would be trying to leave the country now. But I don't. And again, that's just my perspective. I'm not saying that anybody who is raising their kids in the United States is doing anything wrong or that they're not. I'm giving you my perspective from where I'm at, from my life, from my, my chosen profession even. That's just me. I'm not saying anyone who doesn't see it that way is wrong or anything like that. That's just my take. So yeah. But yeah, I would try, because like I would want them to be in a place where, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't want to be nervous that every day that they go to school there might be a shooting. I wouldn't want to live that way. I wouldn't want them to live that way. I wouldn't want my kids to grow up in a place where they might have to have a bulletproof backpack on just in case. I don't want that for them. I don't want them to have to decide between going into crippling amounts of debt or not going to college. I don't want them to have to choose between those two things. I would want them to be able to go to college. So, yeah, I'd feel a lot of pressure to leave if I had kids. And yeah, it bums me out to say that. It really does. I don't like that that's the reality. And I hope someday it isn't. And in fact, hey, even if I decide, to have kids in the future, I hope that maybe that's not the case. That I would feel like, no, I can raise them right here. But right now that's not the case. I certainly don't feel that way right now. And, if my wife came home today and said, I want to have kids, I would say, let's do it. And then I would say, where do you want to move? And if she said Nowhere. We're staying in the United States. I would say, well, then we're not having kids anytime soon. If you want to have kids, we have to go somewhere else because I will not be able to say to myself when I look in the mirror that I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that that kid is having every opportunity just as good, if not better, than I had. I can't say that if we stay here. If we weren't able to leave, that would be different. But hey, there's four types of folks. What the fuck? There's four types as far as like professions are concerned. There's four types that are really desirable in other countries. Doctors, which I am not. Educator, which I am not. Engineers, which I am not. Creatives, which I am. So those are the big four. And of course, there's others. I didn't name all of them, but those are the big four, broadly, defined categories that are attractive to other countries. I fall into one of those four. So, it's possible for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's easier for me than a lot of other people. As far as like, I don't have a profession that limits me to one place. I mean, for the most part, I just need a good internet connection, which the United States really struggles in offering, which we get to experience that firsthand, folks. So yeah. So that's my take on that. And yeah, Canada's on my, why Canada's kind of on my list because, my family, you think about family and that's a part of your life and stuff. And I like my family. And my wife and I both realized that if we went to Toronto, for instance, which is ironic when you think about it. If I left the country, I could potentially be closer to my family. But if I moved to Toronto or somewhere like it, I'd be like 4.5 hours from my family. They live in Pittsburgh. Most of my family, well, some of my family lives elsewhere, but my parents are in Pittsburgh. And I have a feeling they're never going to leave. So, that's where my parents are going to be, presumably, for the rest of their lives. So if I lived in a place like Toronto, I'd be closer to my parents and I'd be closer to my wife's family too. My wife's family is in Massachusetts. We did look, I mean, just out of curiosity, we'd be driving distance from both of our families. We'd be about, I think, 4.5, 5 from mine. We'd be about 7 from hers. So, yeah. Anyway, so, so that got real. That got real. Some of you are asking about Lucy. Lucy's okay. I mean, Lucy's fine here. Lucy can live anywhere. She's fine. I don't have to worry about Lucy going to school. I don't have to worry about Lucy. Yeah. So Lucy is just, she gets good, she gets very good vet care and she gets her food and yeah, she's doing good. So Lucy could live anywhere. I mean, if Lucy, in fact, the best thing for Lucy is not making her travel. So so it's best if Lucy just stays put right where she is. And she's happy. She's adapted to the our new coastal location. For a second, she had when we first moved to Southern California, Lucy and myself, she actually did have an adjustment period to the climate. She was having a weird time in the climate. Like she was shedding a lot and it was kind of stressing her out. And like I took her to the vet and they were like, honestly, it could be like sometimes that happens to cats. Like they have like a period of time where it's hard for them to adjust to that climate. So if it doesn't go away in like a couple weeks, bring her back. And it went away. She adapted to it. And it was almost the same time that it took me. I remember when I first got here to SoCal, I was getting headaches somewhat on the regular. And honestly, it's because I wasn't doing this enough. I just, I wasn't used to like living in a desert climate. And I just wasn't hydrating enough and my body wasn't used to it. So I would get headaches on the regular. And, I just kind of adapted to it. your body adapts. Um, yeah. Anyway, so Lucy's good. Lucy's not. I mean, politically, Lucy's very much an outcast in the United States. I mean, she's very much, against the duopoly. She's very much like capitalism's got to go. But it's funny, but my neighbor's a big lefty. And so we get along pretty good. He's a really cool guy. I've not walked the dog yet, but I'm working on it. And we were kind of like just joking around about it. We're like, yeah, clearly we're just look at where we live. The ocean's right there. We literally move to the frickin' edge. We live in the corner because we know we don't fit in politically. So we're like, well, we can get out by land or by sea, and we live in the corner. Anyway, let me go to the super chats here, see what y'all are saying. Climate Rebel over on the Rockfin, what's up? Thank you so much for the Rockfin tip. This is a heavy question, but let me get to it. FYI, what constitutes free speech law? Are the centuries of case law in which the finding was consistent? The burden to be met for censorship. Does the speech do or incite harm? Widely not being met. Violation of the Constitution. All lies are harmful, even those considered white little lies. Okay. Or lies of omission are the most harmful, you say. Yeah, I mean that's. I think some of your abbreviations there. I'm not picking up on what you're saying exactly, but my take is the free speech laws in the United States are actually pretty good. I think that's one of the areas where I think we do it pretty well, and I think a lot of other countries. I prefer our approach to it. And other countries have a completely different approach. I mean, over in England, for instance, they have a completely different approach to, what we refer to as the First Amendment. And, that's okay. I mean, the concept of free speech is still in a lot of other places. I'm not implying that it isn't, but they have some slightly different variations of what that really means, and that's not a bad thing. But I think our laws are pretty solid as far as what should have consequence and what we have to allow so that everybody has a voice. I think that it's a good thing that, defamation can have consequences because you're, blatantly harming somebody else. So there can be consequences for that. I think there should be consequences for an incite to violence. I think that's a good law. I don't think it's a good thing to just censor people because you disagree with them. I don't think that's a good thing. And I don't think even if the views are very, very despicable, well, if you start censoring and none of these free speech laws were technically violated, well, where are you going to stop? I think that's a fair principle. So yeah, I think the free speech laws of the United States are pretty solid. I think there's 9 things. And I'm not going to go in depth with all of them right now. I don't even know all of them off the top of my head, but I took a law class in college. I've read about our free speech law before. Again, I am not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice at all. But in my opinion, as just a dude who tries to pay attention and do his best as a participant in the world, I think our free speech laws are pretty decent. Are they perfect? I'm sure they're not. None are. But I think they're pretty freaking good. And I certainly couldn't come up with something better on my own. I can tell you that much. So yeah, I think we should just follow them. Like it's not like, to me, it's like it's not that complicated. We have a blueprint right here. It's right here. It's right here. Why don't we just follow it? Why don't we just follow? Why can't? Yeah. Anyway, you get it. You get it. When chat, thank you very much for the beautiful face. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the super chat and the beautiful face. And Red Pill, love and peace to all. Thank you for that, Red Pill. Love and peace to you as well. Brandon, thank you very much for the super chat contribution and for your other one here where you say, hopefully we'll see you in Madison or Galena, Illinois soon. Have you watched that Hicks video yet? What Hicks video? Uh are you referring to Bill Hicks? And if so, what are you referring to exactly? You'll have to let me know. So I don't know. Tell me what you're referring to. And then Madison, we should be in Madison this year if all goes as planned. Fingers crossed. Hopefully within the next couple weeks we'll have some announcements regarding touring, but everything is still very tentative because we don't know exactly how far along we are as of right now. But hopefully, again, our first priority is rescheduling all the 2020 dates we had to cancel. Madison, Wisconsin is among those dates. That's what we're working on now. We're also working on a couple other cities too. So that's what we're working on. That's what we're hoping to get to as quickly and as safely as possible. But yeah, thank you for that. There we go. Thank you, Climate Rebel, for your for your tip over on the Rockfin tip. Thank you very much for that. Hope you are well. Thank you, Wenchat, Red Pill, and Brandon for your super chat contributions. You keep this show on the air. And thank you, Nina, Edwin, Chris, and Paziamores for this week's topics. You keep this show on the air and you make the patron stream. For everyone tuning in, this is the patron stream where I respond directly to Rockfin Premium members and patrons. The replay of this stream is only available on Patreon or Rockfin Premium. It goes out live to everyone, but the replay is only available on Patreon or Rockfin Premium. How do you become a patron, you ask? You go to patreon.com/romplacone and you pledge a give what you can level. Everyone gets all the same perks no matter what you give. So it's a give what you can, whatever you're comfortable with. If you're on hard times, don't worry about it. There's plenty of ways to support this show for free. Like these videos, share, make sure you're subscribed. Write a review of the audio podcast. That goes a long way. Give a good review of the audio podcast. That really helps, which is just Get Your News On with Rom, wherever you get your podcasts. And but if you're on stable ground and there's a little bit you wouldn't miss each month, patreon.com/romplacone. You get the replay of this stream and all other patron streams. You get a patron Zoom show once a week, and I will make you a theme song. That's all for Give What You Can level. Don't you need a theme song? Everyone needs a theme song. Who doesn't need a theme song? Everyone. Maybe you got your own podcast and you're thinking, I need a theme song for this podcast. Boom. Patreon.com/romplacone. All right. And Jess, what's up? Any Austin dates this year? I don't know about Austin this year. So in 2020, we weren't planning on Texas because we had just been there. So chances are Texas is going to be a little later, but we'll definitely be coming back to Austin soon. Yeah, we'll definitely be back soon. Oh, Brandon, you were referring to the Bill Hicks. So those are actually CDs. I have a bunch of unreleased Bill Hicks stuff that his brother Steve sent to me in the mail, and I still haven't listened to it. I'm just waiting for like a really special moment. Like I'm so like excited about the whole thing that I'm just waiting for that special moment, Anyway, so yeah. But Texas, you're definitely it's definitely going to happen. Canada, we're going to be coming up, speaking of Canada, we're going to be touring Canada probably in summer of 2022. If all goes as planned. Again, everything's so freaking tentative, but hopefully there will be some touring later in 2021 where we're going to hit all the dates we were supposed to hit in 2020. We're going to make all those up. And then in 2022, we're going to hit some areas we weren't able to hit in 2021. And we're going to be doing a thing up in Canada. We're going to be doing a more extensive thing in Canada, which will also include some of the really northern parts of the United States that we might not hit this time around. So Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, we might be tying you in with Canada, but we're coming. Don't worry. So thank you for that, Jess, and stay safe out in Austin. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Red Pill. Thank you, Wenchat. And of course, over on the Rockfin, thank you, Climate Rebel. And thank you to the patrons again for the topics this week. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Paziamores. This has been the patron stream. We'll be back tomorrow with an official Get Your News On with Ron stream. Lauren Ashcraft will be joining the show tomorrow. It's that last Monday of the month. Always loved going on with her. So that's going to be a blast. So tune in for that. That's tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace. Peace.